It was a cold evening in downtown Seattle, the kind where the sky looked like brushed steel and the rain whispered against glass windows like a sad melody. Inside the glowing warmth of a small Italian cafe, a young woman named Elena stood behind the counter, her trembling hands carefully balancing cups of coffee. Her soft brown eyes carried the weight of too many unspoken dreams, and her silence often made her invisible to those around her. Elena wasn't mute, but she spoke very little. Shy, withdrawn, and constantly overshadowed by life's cruelty, she found refuge in her quietness. Yet, little did she know, that same quietness was about to change her world forever. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, then please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the power of humanity. Elena had been working at the cafe for nearly 3 years. Her father had passed away when she was only 16, leaving behind debt and silence in the small house they shared. Her mother had fallen ill, and every paycheck Elena earned went toward medication and rent. She had no time for herself, no college, no friends, no weekends. Just long hours, forced smiles, and the endless hum of the coffee machine. Yet even in her exhaustion, she had a gift, a kind of gentle grace that radiated through her eyes. Every morning, she greeted the few regulars with soft nods. There was an old painter who came for espresso, a lonely man who spent hours reading newspapers, and one woman who never spoke a single word but smiled warmly every time Elena brought her tea. The woman was elderly, elegant, and always dressed in pearl gray coats with matching hats. Her silver hair was perfectly combed, and her eyes sparkled with something that felt like quiet intelligence. But Elena soon noticed something unusual about her. She never reacted when others spoke. She never said thank you or goodbye. Instead, she used her hands, signing gestures that Elena didn't understand at first. It was only after a week of observation that she realized the woman was deaf. Elena, who had always been drawn to silence, felt an unexplainable connection. After her shifts, she began searching online for sign language tutorials, practicing late into the night in front of her cracked mirror. At first, her movements were awkward, clumsy. But soon, she learned how to say simple things: hello, how are you, thank you. One chilly morning, as the cafe bell jingled and the elderly woman entered with her usual calmness, Elena walked up to her table with a cup of tea, and for the first time, signed, "Good morning." The woman froze, her eyes widening with disbelief. Then, slowly, her face softened into a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. She replied in signs, "You know how to sign?" Elena nodded shyly, her cheeks burning. From that day on, their silent friendship blossomed. Every afternoon, Elena would serve her tea and spend a few minutes signing small conversations. She learned that the woman's name was Margaret. She had lost her hearing years ago in an accident but never lost her will to connect. Weeks passed, and their friendship deepened. For the first time in years, Elena felt seen. Margaret often watched her work, her eyes filled with warmth. One evening, as Elena wiped tables after closing, Margaret signed to her, "You have a kind heart. Never lose it." Elena smiled, not realizing that these simple words would change her fate forever. A few days later, a tall man in an expensive suit entered the cafe. His presence instantly drew attention. He had sharp features, a confident walk, and eyes that seemed to see through everything. Elena noticed the way the staff whispered. Apparently, he was Alexander Pierce, the owner of the city's largest real estate company, a billionaire known for his brilliance and his coldness. Yet his expression that evening wasn't arrogance. It was tension, impatience. He sat by the window, scrolling through his phone, clearly distracted. When Elena brought his coffee, he barely glanced at her. But just as she turned to leave, the cafe door opened, and Margaret walked in. The man immediately stood, his face softening as he hurried to her side. That was the moment Elena realized, Margaret was his mother. What happened next would forever remain etched in her memory. Margaret smiled and gestured to Elena, signing something that made Alexander frown. Elena hesitated but signed back, "Hello." Alexander's head snapped up, confusion crossing his face. He turned to his mother, who began signing rapidly, explaining how Elena had learned sign language just to talk to her. For a moment, Alexander simply stared, as if processing the scene before him, a shy waitress communicating with his deaf mother in perfect sign language. Something changed in his expression. The coldness melted. His eyes grew misty. The cafe had gone silent, even the barista behind the counter stopped moving. Slowly, Alexander walked toward Elena. She stood frozen, unsure what to expect. He took a deep breath and said softly, "Thank you, for making my mother feel understood." Elena's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. Margaret reached for her son's hand and signed something that made him chuckle through tears. Later, Elena would learn she had said, "This girl speaks with her heart, not just her hands." Over the next few weeks, Alexander began visiting the cafe regularly with his mother. He watched quietly as Elena and Margaret communicated through signs, laughter, and gentle smiles. Slowly, he began joining in, first awkwardly, then with growing ease as Elena helped him practice. For the first time, he wasn't the billionaire behind glass walls. He was just a son learning to speak to his mother again. Rumors spread among the cafe staff, whispering that the billionaire was falling for the waitress. But Elena didn't believe it. She was too ordinary, too invisible. Yet she couldn't ignore the warmth in Alexander's gaze when he watched her sign with his mother, or the quiet gratitude in his voice whenever he spoke to her. One rainy evening, as the cafe lights dimmed, Alexander waited until everyone left. He approached Elena, nervous in a way she'd never seen. He confessed that for years, he had failed to connect with his mother. Work had consumed him, guilt had silenced him, and he'd almost forgotten what love looked like, until he saw it in Elena's kindness. He offered her a position, not as a waitress, but as his mother's personal companion and interpreter. It was more than a job, it was a lifeline. Elena hesitated, unsure if she belonged in such a world, but Margaret gently held her hand and signed, "Come with us. You are family now." From that day forward, Elena's life transformed. The world she entered was dazzling, mansions, marble halls, and breathtaking gardens. But beneath the surface, she remained the same humble girl who once counted tips and prayed for rent money. Her focus wasn't on luxury, it was on Margaret. She helped her attend charity events, read to her every morning, and even accompanied her to medical checkups. Their bond deepened into something that felt almost maternal. Alexander, meanwhile, watched from the sidelines, learning from both of them. He began spending more time at home, sharing meals, laughing again. And in those quiet evenings, as Margaret dozed by the fireplace, Alexander would find himself drawn to Elena, her simplicity, her empathy, the way she treated everyone with equal respect. She wasn't impressed by his wealth, and that made her presence even more precious. One day, tragedy struck. Margaret's health began to decline rapidly. Doctors said her heart was weak. Elena refused to leave her side, signing words of comfort, reading stories, singing softly through gestures. Alexander was shattered, watching the woman who had raised him fade away. But in her final moments, Margaret signed something to him, her frail hands trembling, "Love the girl who speaks with her soul." After her passing, the mansion felt painfully empty. Alexander withdrew for weeks, drowning in silence. Elena stayed out of respect, quietly helping with arrangements, her heart breaking for him. She thought her time with them had ended. She even prepared to leave, packing her few belongings in a small suitcase. But before she could go, Alexander appeared at the doorway, eyes red from sleepless nights. Without a word, he took her hands and signed, clumsily but clearly, "Don't leave me too." The moment shattered her. Tears streamed down both their faces as he continued to sign, "You gave my mother joy. You brought love back into this house. Please stay with me. In that instant, silence became their language of love. They didn't need words. Their eyes said everything, the grief, the gratitude, the connection that transcended all barriers. Months later, the world was stunned when headlines read, "Billionaire marries former waitress who helped his deaf mother reconnect with life." But behind those glamorous words was a story of compassion, courage, and two souls who found each other through kindness. Elena never sought wealth or fame. What she found was something far more profound, a family, a purpose, and a love that didn't need sound to be heard. And Alexander never forgot the lesson his mother and Elena had taught him, that sometimes, the most beautiful voices are silent. If this story touched your heart, please make sure to like the video, share it with someone who believes in love that heals, and subscribe for more true life stories that restore faith in humanity. Before we end, we'd love to hear from you. Would you learn sign language to connect with someone you care about? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Because at the end of the day, love doesn't always need words, it only needs someone willing to listen with their heart. Red Heart.